Greetings, worldwide family. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the new podcast, New Elder Wisdom Podcast. We have a very special guest today. My brother Wayne Barkus is here. He is a men's work facilitator, breathwork facilitator, an evolving soul, all around amazing guy who I've had an opportunity to spend a bunch of time with, someone who I am blessed to call friend, and also the foundation creator namesake of this podcast, through some conversations that we had and the needs that we were seeing generated through our time together, our work together. So Wayne, thanks for being here, man. It's great to have you.
Yeah, you bet, Hunter. It's great to be here, and I'm feeling into the new elder wisdom conversation that we had when we were in Tepetz and here I am. I'm like, yes, my man did it. He brought it through. So I've been waiting for this day.
Beautiful, man. Yeah, it's we've had the opportunity to really grow together through men's workspaces and a part in our own development, evolution, and commitment to service. And as we move through it together, we saw that there was a need for something greater, something that hadn't been charted yet, and that was the place of elderhood, and that we needed to embrace our own path from being uncles, being mentors, being leaders, and moving towards elderhood. And so I just wanted to start here. What is an elder to you? And how do you see the condition of elderhood out here in the wide Western world?
Great question. Yeah, I mean, for me, an elder is a man who speaks from his wisdom, not from his wound. And in terms of the condition, wow, I don't see it. I don't know where the elders are. I know of them across the globe, but they're certainly not in my neck of the woods. When I think of just the disparity of the gap for the wisdom from, our father's generation, right now I'm actually caretaking my father. So all of the conversations that there's a part of me that, definitely like yearns to be able to have these more soulful conversations of tell me your story. Let's kind of unpack it. And let's like speak to the wisdom that you've learned. It's absent in my life. In my lineage, it's just non-existent. And so when you and I were speaking to, new elder wisdom, I recognize that we have an opportunity now while we're still yet young. We have microphones, we have podcasts, we have social media. We have an opportunity to really start to fill in this gap with this conversation of what it looks like now for young men to be looking for the light bearers, the beacons, the mature men that have gone through fatherhood, that have gone through their hero's journey, their dark night of the soul, and they've come out on the other end. Where are those men at?
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned fatherhood. I left it out of your intro. Both of us are fathers. It's been foundational, cathartic, and probably a catalyst for a lot of our growth, our inability to stay the same, to stay stuck. And just in your everyday right now, what's fueling the fire? What's got you stoked? What are you moving towards that gets you jumping out of bed and hitting all the things you need to do it well?
Man, that's a great question. Before coming onto this podcast, I just kind of sat with it for a moment and was just, reflecting. I've been doing a lot of reflecting. My birthday's in 6 days, and I'm getting ready to head to the ocean and give myself some space and grace. And I've been reflecting, I was just thinking about you and I and our journey. I can remember seeing us in the parking lot somewhere in San Diego, just having these conversations and checking in and, feeling into what we experience being fathers and being in relationships and all of the things. And I can say that over the last year, I've spent a lot more time moving a little notch slower. I actually look back to the journey of the last 6 years, and there's a part of me that is just absolutely blown away with what I did and how I did it, and the places and the spaces and the men and the magnitude. It's enough for several lifetimes, honestly. And so I've been really kind of sitting in the gratitude and the reflection to be able to really take what has happened and let it land in my body and move and speak from that place. And I feel a lot more grace. I feel a lot more peace. I feel a lot less desperation in needing to get anywhere. I've definitely moved into a point in my life where I really trust the process and all of the pieces line up, whether or not it's in my actual, timeline or what I would hope it to be, it always comes true. And so I've been definitely sitting in a deep space of trust. And I can say that I have fuel that's there constantly. And I think it's because of the way that I live, the way that I think, the way that I pray, mentally, physically, and spiritually. I really am dialed in. I'm in really great alignment, and it's been like that for years. And so I kind of am plugged into nature and the rhythm, and it just I get to move that way. So I'm getting ready to step into this deeper, chapter of reflection for my birthday, and then come out into Leo season and really start showing up for the clothing brand that I've been creating for the last several years. So yeah, just going to take it down a notch for a minute.
Right on. I heard you had some good models for that. We're looking forward
Yes,
to
yes.
that gift you're going to give the world.
Yeah,
I
man.
want to go back a little bit. With such a beautiful definition, those who speak through their wisdom, not their wounds, as being the elders. And you and I, having been in men's spaces with men of all kinds of ages, and you speaking to you're there caretaking for your father, and yet you still don't feel there's an elder present in your life, because we see that elderhood is not achieved by age, that it's not something that's just given because we reach these benchmarks. And I think in our society, perhaps we're told that it is. Um, for the men out there that are looking for mentors, what are some things they should look out for when it comes to dealing with perhaps a man who is older but still moving from his wounds?
Man, that's a great question. And all I can usually do in these cases is point back to my experience of when I first stepped into social media. It was a new thing for me, and it was really a new thing to search for a man that was speaking from a language that captivated me, like something touched me. And I'm just going to caveat that in social media, part of the journey for these men is to learn the discernment of who is presenting and who is the real deal. And, my invitation to any man that's looking and, trying to study, I studied men for quite some time. And I think the preset operating system that I had is that I didn't trust men because I didn't trust myself. I was so out of integrity that it took quite a bit of a stretch for me to believe that there was a man that was in integrity. I'm from Chicago. I was in the construction industry. There wasn't an ounce of integrity that I experienced in the men in my life. I experienced avoidance, toxicity, addiction, lashing out with anger and violence. And it was really rowdy. And so sitting in the content that gets consumed and really orienting themselves around how they would like to be able to speak one day. And I like to think if that guy's saying something that kind of resonates, and one day I'd like to speak like that or to that, or he's got a particular flair or flavor or expression, I say, orient yourself towards that and pay attention and lean in and start asking questions. Like, find out more about who this person is behind the social media appearance. And I got to meet all of my mentors. I got to meet all of the men that I looked up to. Every single one. The universe brought us together. And whether there was things that weren't in alignment or whether I pedestaled that person to be perfect, all of it was purposeful. So there's no perfection. There's just going to be revelation. And I think one of the gifts that I continue to get to learn is that in these role models that men are looking for, all they're doing is reflecting back to us our greatness. So if there's an expression, or if there's a language, or if there's a voice or a tone or a canter that somebody has that I say, oh, whatever that guy's got, that's turning me on. Well, that's something that's in me that's still buried. And so for me, I picked 5 or 6 mentors because at that time I didn't realize they were all reflecting my magic back to me, but I had yet to see it. And so, I got to go on the journey of actually feeling into those men and really truly thanking them and understanding. And it truly is a blessing to be able to find the voices of men that are like the torchbearers.
Beautiful. I often think too, on the shadow side of things, we would see occasions where so-called elders would not give space for younger men to grow without their permission and without their roadmap in place. And I think it's really important for men out there to recognize this, that age or that elderhood should never come with a suppression aspect beyond safety and integrity. And that we need to be, as growing elders, we need to be really cognizant too that we might be mentoring something. That doesn't mean we're not going to learn something from that person. And, that was a real lesson for me traveling in the spaces that we did, that there were young men younger than me that had things to teach me. And that often my job was to take that and refine it a little bit and then give offering or expansion, expounding on what was being presented by the inspiration of youth. How does that land for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think of, kind of like the guru culture that's being, kind of taken down now in terms of spirituality. And I think we're in a really interesting, discerning place where, we get to choose our mentors, like we get to choose our elders, because there's very few out there. And we get to listen to our intuition and our discernment and to know when it's time to actually walk away. And I think there's, so many people that get captivated by, kind of this guru or this person that's carrying all of this wisdom or lineages and things of that magnitude. And I think there's just so much beauty in the process of learning. And I do think that there is a point where we get to graduate from that mentorship with a particular person of wisdom. And it's not a journey of shaming the person, but I do believe that we do need to sweep the entry, and I believe that there's an apprenticeship. You and I come from an age of apprenticeship and journeyman, and being in the construction industry, I know that there's a process to learning, and there's a process to actually taking the information and then embodying it and carrying it through into the world. And I think that's what I speak to when I speak to elder wisdom, is that they're literally the vessel of wisdom that they carry with them. And it's not just conceptual words. It's not influencer wisdom. It's not clickbait. It's lived, tried and true experience of gold. And so I do think there is a point where once we understand and go through the apprentice process, we do need to spread our wings and move on.
Yeah, absolutely. And within that as well, I think that we can recognize a true teacher as someone who's leading us to our own power. One of the dynamics of the guru, religion, politics is that authority, or the medical industry, authority is always being given away, and the systems that are in place, that are entrenched, are really nourishing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, give us your power. We'll let you know you're okay if you just give away your authority.
Yeah.
So, to the young men and women out there looking for mentorship, this is something to look for. Is the individual leading you to your own power? Or are they looking for their own validation of their wounds by asking you to give them, total authority in your life?
And it's all purposeful too, because
Yep.
I attracted myself mentors in my life that didn't reflect my power. I actually handed them my power. And there's plenty of communities out there that have a funnel up until the top of the power system. And there is a part in the journey where there's a little click that goes off into a man's psyche where it's just like, oh, wait a minute, why am I giving my power away? Why am I not powerless? But oftentimes we do attract those people to us to reflect back to the part of our psyche that we're handing our power away. And so I do say it's all purposeful, but I also do say that there is a higher level of discernment nowadays where we get to really choose and feel into and breathe into who it is that we choose to work with, who it is that we choose to hire, like really asking for references and experience and credentials. I think is one of the most important things to be looking for moving forward in such a saturated personal development space.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really well said. I've really seen you sharpen in your message, particularly in the past 6 months. It's
Hmm.
like, man, Wayne has got a batch of clarity that the world needs right now, and
Hmm.
the expression has been beautiful. It's been plain, but also layered and nuanced at the same time. And you talk a lot about the myths and the programming
Hmm.
that have basically brought forward and nourished the shadow aspects of the masculine. I'd like you to speak a little bit to those myths and that programming that you see as right in our faces,
Hmm. Yeah. Wow.
maybe
Well,
unseen in our faces.
yeah. Thank you for that. I mean, it's, you know, when I first discovered in my own journey the operating system that I was, kind of like really starting to crack the matrix of my reality, and I started to see my patterns, it was a great unraveling for me, and it was so grueling and so painful and so beautiful. But like every single way that I was moving from the water that I put into my body to the food that I was putting into everything, I started paying really close attention to. And as I started really dialing in mentally in terms of allowing different thoughts to run the show, I used to like hear a thought and just go with it. And I would just spend the whole day just traveling around and feeling so exhausted. And I'm like, why don't I ever just allow that thought to just like go by? And so when I started to really kind of zoom out and say, how am I living? And just look at like a 10,000 overfoot view of like, what's the operating system that is Wayne? And what would it look like to pick up the hood, pull the engine, and put a brand new engine in and move that way? And what I recognized is while I can do that and I can put different things in my body, I can program myself differently, I'm still within a program. And within the program, there's propaganda, there's media, there's empire, there's this whole subset algorithm of energy that we get to be born into that perpetuates sickness, that perpetuates disconnection, it perpetuates division, it perpetuates everybody to be sleeping and quietly comatose in this numbness. And I was fortunate to experience it. I was fortunate to be sick. I was fortunate to be almost incapable of moving. I think I was 36 years old, and my physical health was that of like a 70-year-old. And when I started to do the work with the Sacred Sons and do coaching stuff, it was really simple for me to kind of point to just little elements of how to enhance somebody's life. But what I recognized is that as I've grown up and as I've seen more, it's more important to me in my community for us to be able to have these bigger conversations about what's really happening beyond the veil. All the way tracing it all the way back to the deepest darkness of who they're worshiping. And I think that conversation was something that I wasn't ready for in the beginning. I think my nervous system would have rejected it, probably out of fear and probably out of potential rejection from people. And what I recognized is in not sharing it, the person that I was actually rejecting was me, because this is true to me. This is actually what I've lived. It's what I see. It's what I continue to see. It's what I continue to point to. I'm not pointing to conspiracies. I'm pointing to actual revelations. This is stuff that has been revealed, and it's all out there for the public to see. And yet the public doesn't actually want to have eyes to see yet, because it requires a very deep looking into one's own soul as to where we've allowed ourselves, where we've hijacked our own knowing and looked the other way for comfort. And so I've definitely just stretched myself into a new conversation of discomfort and sharing it with the world. And it seems that the time is ripe.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's so much of what we've worked with is helping individuals to get beyond the victim identity, and yet there is a war going on, and we need to be able to discern, which is a word you used, what we're eating, right? Not just the food, but through our eyes, through our ears, through our soul, through our spirit. And in that, there is a recognition that there is a malevolent impulse in the world that benefits and profits off of the shadow in men and women. So much of that rooted in the body, right? Something's missing, put something in the body, put something on the body. That's gonna take care of the problem. When
Yeah.
we need to find what is within the body, for me, in the altar of the heart, which is the soul, which
Mm-hmm.
is ready to share its graces. And so when we recognize that we're in war, because I really hear you speaking to, there's responsibility for self. The victim needs to go away, and yet we need to stay ever vigilant, in knowing that that there's an impulse that's trying to force feed us certain ideas, certain ways of being, that is relentless, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And
Picked up.
so, right, and so what we found is that we fucking can't do it alone. We're not meant to be ever vigilant,
Mm-hmm.
right? Sometimes we need, our brothers. We need people by our side who can maybe carry us when we stumble, because then we can return the favor. Do you see that community aspect that we've had in isolated cathartic containers now rippling into your life, where you feel you have a trusted consortium of brotherhood?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a a way I would have ever spoken to what I'm actually speaking to had it not been for not only the support, but for the holding. Like I feel like the men that I have in my life really, we hold each other accountable to the level of integrity, of truth, expression, and freedom and sovereignty that we're calling into our lives. And hiding or disappearing or not showing up isn't something that is allowed for too long without a check-in. There's no disappearing in my world without me getting a ping or a message from a brother checking in to see how I'm doing. Um, Highly unlikely that this version of me that you're sitting with right now 7 years ago would have spoken to anything I would have spoken to. I definitely, with community, feel support. I feel tribe. I don't feel, any sense of rejection or abandonment. I only feel nothing but support, and we get to have these conversations together so that we get to learn how to move in this world in a brand new way. I've been seeing these wars since I was a kid. Nothing's changed. Absolutely nothing's changed. And it's just gotten to the point where I think we get to have these bigger conversations about what we see, how we get to speak to it, how we get to move in community, how we get to grow our own food, how we get to find the local farmers. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? With community, it's everything. I mean, it's how we're going to get through this.
Beautiful. And you're in Austin, Texas now, yes?
Yes.
And kind of ground zero for some of this pop psychedelic movement that has been so amplified by social media and such. And we're also now beginning to see those structures crumble to a certain degree. Are you noticing any shift communally in Austin? Is there an awakening, or do you see a further burrowing of heads into the sand down there?
No, that's a great question. I moved here during COVID, and so there was a mass migration to Austin, and there was a handful of places, Asheville, Austin, Bali. People were just, getting out of California ultimately, or from the Midwest. Me being from the Midwest, I just couldn't take the cold anymore. And when I came here, it was the absolute peak of a spiritual awakening happening where people were coming to community. People were desperate to be amongst others and have a mask off. And I think a lot of just the excitement around community created a lot of opportunity for people that were, in the coaching space or crafted at creating community to kind of create these spaces that felt like community, but they were actually funnels. Mm-hmm. And it didn't take too long. I mean, but it took, about a year or two where people started to wake up and say, wait a minute, this isn't actually community. This is a funnel. This isn't reciprocity. This is only going one way. And, I have some really incredible soul family here. And we just do our thing. And I'm not really inserted into the community dynamic like I used to be, but I recently went to a Daybreaker event, which is an incredible all-day, dance event. And boy, I noticed an incredible shift in the environment. There used to be what we would call the spiritual group. There would be the Burning Man group, and then there would be the common Austin Texans. And it was clustered, it was cliquey, but everybody knew who everybody was. And this particular time, there was none of that. And I just looked around and I just saw what looked like normal, incredible, happy humans. And it wasn't so clustered, wasn't so, like performative in this everybody's wearing mala beads type look, which look, I did it too. And so while I'm not sure if there was actually a maturation of the individuals, or if there was a maturation of the community, or everybody just took off and went to other places where Austin didn't necessarily hold the Austin's gritty. And so, being a Chicago boy, Austin's really gritty. It's kind of edgy. It's really hot. The trees are unforgiving. They're able to make it in 110-degree weather. So fluff doesn't really survive here. So that kind of fluffy stuff, and whatever remnants, I think was just knocked out in Aubrey's podcast. So yeah, it seems like there's a great dismantling or, reorienting elsewhere across the globe.
That's really well said. I think that maybe we would agree that one of the reasons that we're arriving at this place where those who have been elevated through a social status into leadership, it's starting to break down. I think we could agree that the reason this is happening is that we've lived through a cultureless culture that offers us no initiation, no rites of initiation. And so it becomes a bit of a trial by fire a lot of times, doesn't it? Because we weren't able to pass through those and be held. And I often felt what we were doing, when we were together in these men's spaces, is we were actually time travelers.
Mm-hmm.
We would build a circle, and that became a time machine where we were able to bring men back to those moments, where something went awry, where a great injury occurred or was
Mm-hmm.
performed, and that was our job as facilitators, was to be able to navigate time well. But all that to say is to come back to initiation. What do you see as the primary initiations that are missing, but also that are coming online for you in this day and age? The things that you want to share as initiation, that you want to be part of.
Mm. Oh wow, I love that question. Yeah, and I think it speaks to the gap with elders because I posted about different lineages, different tribes, the rites of passage that they had. I remember really soaking myself into the understanding of different cultures of rites of passage and just really feeling into like, fuck, man, I would have loved that. Like, it sounds brutal, being taken out of the house and then being brought to, council with all of the elders and then, being cut. And that cut is like the memory, the scar of being like all of these stories that I read. I was like, oh man, I missed that, right? But then I got to get initiated, and the initiation for me it was so layered, culturally, to feel into pieces of other cultures. I'm a child of the world, and so while I see like the takedown to spiritual practices, I still believe that I'm a child of the world. So yes, I'm going to sit in Tepoztlan with peyote, and I'm going to understand the consciousness of Mexico, and I'm going to commune with the land that way. And yes, I'm going to go to Peru, and I'm going to commune with the consciousness of ayahuasca that way. And so I don't feel that I needed a particular direction to my father's lineage in Lithuania that he has no idea. And I don't think they were really singing many songs in Lithuania 100 years ago that were joy filled. And so I loved, and my initiation was into other cultural practices so I can actually feel into what sacred might be. And sweat lodge and plant medicine and the dieta and the prayers around the fire, the songs that we would sing, all of that, the initiation for me was into what does sacred actually mean in a world that's stripped of the sacred. And so I think the initiation for me spiritually was to be introduced into the essence of the sacred, for me to experience God in multiple ways across multiple different timelines. And then I was initiated somatically into my past, which was a man standing looking at me fearless, willing to hold my heart in the most horrifying, just confronting moment of my childhood that I got to share for the first time and release from my body, and having a witness to me sharing my truth and holding me, and me actually getting to feel the strength of what that expression of truth feels like versus the actual repression. And so when we talk about initiation, I say having a witness, and that witness being a strong man that's not shaming me. He's inviting me into my strength. He's inviting me into my power. And I think men need other men for that. And so when I speak of initiation, it can be done in a moment. It can be done, it can be done in a locker room. And I do it in locker rooms, man. Sometimes I have guys that come up to me and I just like, I take them to that place, and I let them cry, and I just let them know like how valid their tears are and how beautiful it is to actually feel into the fucking rawness and the ache of emotion. And so, some of these are micro initiations, and then there's macro initiations, which I believe happen in more of a group, kind of away from home type setting to really crack it open a little bit more.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think it's important for people to look at the word, right? It's an initiation, right? It's the beginning of something. It isn't the completion of something, right?
Yeah.
in an instant society, it can be
Yeah.
difficult for
Yeah.
people to realize. It's like, well, I'm initiated. Check off the list.
Yay.
Back to the bar. Here we go.
Yes. So
But
true, man. So true.
and that initiation is really an invitation into integrity, to the path that's been initiated, right? And I think you've
Yeah.
really beautifully expressed that as the very first step of initiation is integrity.
Yes.
And you've spoken to shame a lot, and I think all of us as men have this kind of perfection complex. We've seen it a lot, like
Sure we do.
because we don't want to be seen as vulnerable and able to fuck up.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the role of reconciliation, forgiveness in regaining integrity in your life?
Wow. Yeah, it's been a little bit of a wild journey there, but for me, the reconciliation began in meditation for me, because in my particular experience, I had quite a bit of emotional abuse that I experienced, not only from my mother but from my ex-wife as well. It just kind of moved into from vessel to vessel for me to hold this incredible amount of shame, that albeit was, passed down from generation to generation. And I really, speaking to perfection, I didn't want to show up. I didn't want to expose myself. Most people don't want to be raw. They don't want to be real. They want to be perfect because they don't want to be rejected. And I had a really difficult time out of the gates expressing myself or showing up. It was like there was this just shiver that I would get before I would do, a story on my social media, or, I did a couple podcasts back then. I would just have like notes in front of me because I was still rehearsing my life. I hadn't lived it yet. I was still rehearsing how to be a good boy. And the reconciliation for me came with me forgiving myself for all the times that I wanted to be perfect, and, just allowing myself the grace to be able to show up just raw, messy, unfiltered, and just that part of me, that's the holy work. And I got to forgive and continue to forgive, all the experiences that happened for me. And I can say that it took several years, before I actually was able to feel the energy of it completely release. Shame is a revelation. So it's like, this is something that I'm carrying around in me. It's a story that I have about myself. Nobody can actually shame me. They can only say something that reveals to me what's already there. So I would create lots of circumstances where somebody would reveal the shame that was there, and I'd be like, damn it, I got to go back in the lab. I got to do a little alchemy here, and I can admittedly say that, over time, I was able to alchemize all of that stuff to the point where when the arrows were cast at me, what normally might have created a reaction where I'm just like, oh, this is really familiar. What is this? Oh, this is shame. It just dissipated, where I was like, oh, yeah, okay, cool. I'm unfuckable with now. Like, that shit's gone.
I love that, brother. I love that you spoke to that it's a process, because I've often thought the same, that forgiveness is an initiation. It's something that we begin by turning towards turning towards the relationality and realizing that things are imbalanced, and however the revelation comes, through shame, through rage, through lying, however it comes. When we face it, it initiates the forgiveness process. And to me, forgiveness is not so much a there, it's done, but it is this continuous walk towards living outside of the influence of the past in a way that is harmful to the present.
Yeah, that takes time.
That takes time.
That
Right?
takes time. Yeah, and we got plenty of time, right? Like, looking back now, I can say, like, I'm grateful that I did all of those steps. I'm grateful that I found, Vishen Lakhani's 6-phase meditation on YouTube, and I did that shit every morning, because in there was an intentional forgiveness practice to actually visualize the person that hurt you sitting across from you and extending your hand in forgiveness. They might not say anything, but you get to sit with forgiving them and letting them react whatever way. Because there was a part of me that wanted the apology, right? And I had to get okay not getting the apology from the people that hurt me. I had to just be okay with it and let them go. And then in the process, something magical happened, which I was able to have compassion for that person. Where I'm just like, wow, they're hurting so much that they can't relate or have any empathy in my experience of what I'm going through. What would it be like if I just extended them a little prayer, a little love, a little compassion, a little grace, because that's what I needed? How hard would it be? It's so easy to cast judgment. Oh man, that's light work, right? That's really easy. Casting judgment is just like ping, 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 ping. For me, integrity and moving through shame became a practice of what is it like for me to actually put light into the place where there's darkness. And so, in all of that rage and all that anger and all that violence that I'd love to put towards that person, what is it like for me to practice the art of praying for that person? Because I'm not separate from them. I'm not awake more than them. We're connected. And as soon as I started praying for that person, I'm not talking about bypassing anger. I felt that shit. I moved through that shit. But it also, the longer that I lived in it, I think the more that I actually amplified its existence. So, in order to create a new neural pathway outside of anger and rage, I was like, what is it like if I just said a prayer before I picked up my children and I saw my ex wife? And it just really started to relinquish my responsibility for this forgiveness or this cord to be fully cut. Can I just be okay with that person being as is? And it's just my responsibility to react to them in a more mature way. It's just that.
Sounds like some alchemy to me.
Yeah.
Turning lead to gold right there.
And that dross, and honestly, I could say that I think shame and apathy is the lowest vibrational measurement, right? And so that's the thick stuff. And so, yes, it does take time, and it is worth it, because when a balloon's held underwater, right, for so long, and then all of a sudden you let the balloon out of water, it's got the entire world that it gets to go travel to. So that's, when I think of alchemy, I'm just like, oh, it's just a balloon that's held underwater. And as soon as you alchemize, you're floating, you're flying, and your vibration's different. You're lighter, your frequency. It's not a bag of bricks that you're carrying around anymore. And it's just worth it. It's worth all the time that it takes, because there will be a day where it's gone and you're just floating.
Yeah, beautiful. I often think of when we ask for forgiveness, perhaps that person isn't able to do that, where we can find empathy and compassion in that, but we also, in our sovereignty and in our commitment to grow, we can still walk as forgiven, in that we can recognize why we needed to be asking for forgiveness in the way, the behavior, the patterns, the deep hurt. And if we can reorient by learning from that, I believe that we can walk as forgiven, even if perhaps there are people that will never in their own minds forgive us.
Mm.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big ask to have other people forgive us. It's a big ask. Some people aren't ready, and so as you say, walk as though you are forgiven. What comes through to me is that the door is open, and I have the door always opened, and all of the people in my life that may have, and I've just experienced this recently, where there was a man that created a story, and his story was absolutely valid. It was absolutely worthy. And he took that entire story and he ran with it. And our relationship just distanced itself. And I could feel the distance. And, I don't go and try to save anybody. I just recognize the distance and I say, this is a cycle. There's a wave. I'll check in with the person, see how they're doing. If I don't hear anything back, I'll give it a little bit more time. And I'll just kind of, put that over here and let's pay attention to it, right? And then that person came back and they revealed to me all of the things. And I'm just like, I've been waiting for you. Like, I'm here. I love you, and thank you for sharing that with me. And cool. Can we step forward and move forward now? Because I'm ready to go forward. No longer do I live in what happened, and also validating that person's experience of what they created based on this entire story and narrative that he told himself, which was all super valid. But if I walk with the judgment and that door is closed, that person may never come back into my life. But if I walk with the forgiveness, then I have this opportunity to have this bigger conversation with this person. I don't discount God touching anybody's life to an ability to bring them back into my life. Ever. After my father's recent heart attack on Easter, I recognized how short and how tiny my prayers for others actually were, Hunter. Like I was praying so small. And the miracle that I got to experience from my father and from the conversations that we got to have for the first time in my life, like I had just enough where I'm like, I didn't ever see that coming. I didn't think that was possible. Like there was an awakening that happened in there. And while it might not be sustainable, like it showed me the power of keeping the door open and keeping the prayer and the vision for forgiveness to be an option for us to come back to love versus having the bridge be burnt. If that's like, if that
Wow.
hits.
Yeah, that does. Yeah. Maybe sometimes we need to put like some blockades on the bridge, but let's not burn it down. Um,
Blockades are necessary sometimes, you know.
yeah.
I think we need some time and space to reorient around our experience. But yeah, at some point we could be like, all right, you know, let's leave those blockades and push them aside and like let's start to come closer together. But it does.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that you touched on your awareness of how little you were praying for others. And I often see this as one of the shadows of the manifestation culture.
Mm,
And really, noticing men in prayer that it's often the self that is advocated for with the divine primarily. And I poured a lodge about a week ago, and I realized that I'm really asking people to pray for others for the first entirety of the 2 rounds. um,
mm,
and it's then we get to the third, it's like, okay, it's your
yeah.
turn now. It's your turn now. And I think that's a really beautiful way. Particularly, women just have a natural way of moving into service,
Hmm.
generally. Not that the shadow viper can't be there,
Yeah.
but when a woman is freeing herself, she goes. Men, I feel like, really need to orient towards that so that their purpose doesn't become implement of power over others.
Yes.
And so
Mm,
I think that's a really beautiful statement, for the people out there. When you sit down to pray, to whoever you pray for,
mhm.
to or whoever you pray to, what's your percentages? Just check in with yourself. What
Mm.
are the percentage for self? What are the percentage for others? Um,
Yeah, I love that. And how
and
high are you going? Like how high? Like I was discounting my prayers for everybody, including myself. You
mm,
know, like I wasn't praying big enough. And I got to really check in on that. Like, what is the part of me that's keeping myself small, and what's the part of me that's also keeping others small in relation to me? And this just came through. Like this was just Easter for me, where I was just like, oh man, did I lose faith a little bit? Like, did I doubt the divine? Because I've seen miracles, and so like, I find myself in the forgetting, and then the remembering is so beautiful. Like I could see the purpose in the forgetting because it allows me to fucking crank up the volume, where I'm just like, I'm gonna pray for all of this stuff to be healed and this and that and this, and like let me crank it up because I've seen miracles. Why not up the ante? you know?
yeah, yeah. And again, with those listening, finding your percentages is not another way to come into shame and competition with self of, oh, I need to be praying more, but just to observe, particularly men, can you begin to orient towards where you will be needed? Oftentimes, I've dealt with men who say, I don't know how to pray. And I say,
Mm,
well, that's the best first prayer. Please
mm,
teach me how to pray.
so good.
You just spoke your first prayer there. But then the other one, is like, have like preparing for things, preparing to serve, preparing to be in leadership, preparing to go into your day. What I find to be the most powerful, simple prayer is, please prepare me for what will be asked of me. Please
Mm.
prepare me for what is needed of me in this day. And for me, that always leads to an orientation to just that, to, oh, I'm needed there. I'm going to go there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's beautiful. And, we, we live in a time when people want to approach the mystery with knowing, right?
It
I
is.
know my God is, right? I like to teach people that the religions are so busy telling God, what he is, they forget to ask how he's doing. Uh, So, I think a lot of people stop at the door of love worried they're not going to call the right name, from programming, whether they grew up in,
Mm-hmm.
ultra orthodox situations that cast a spell of shame on them. Whatever it is, know that you're approaching the door of love. And the
Mm-hmm.
name don't matter. I knew an old codger lived out on one of the islands up here once, and he always talked to God as the Big Bob. Just say, Big Bob, how you doing today? I need your help down here. Just because he needed a name, and he
Yeah.
always liked everyone that he had met named Bob. So that's what
That's
he
so
went
good.
with. Right. So there's like, I believe there's, I often talk about this is a time of the orphan, it's a time of those who are born outside of cultures of initiation, earth wisdom, and cosmic identity.
Yeah.
And so, to simplify things, people, you are approaching the door of merciless, radical love.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you are willing to go there with unknowing,
Mm-hmm.
put away the need to know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can we just move towards it because our heart is leading us there? So that we can kind of informalize these things, so that perhaps the formalization can be reformulated in a way that supports the modern initiation that we've all been looking for. You've seen me attempt this, with Hawthorne ceremony, and just the utilization of song, which all the songs that have been generated are born out of that prayer, prepare me for what is needed.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's almost, I often like to think of Hawthorne's ceremony as kindergarten. It's like, we're
Mm.
all going to go back to kindergarten. We're going to sit and sing the songs of the lessons that we need.
Yes.
I long to remember, or, for the wounds of the world we cry, and from the wounds of the world we rise. Can we begin to clarify these in, as you said, our meditative moments? Look at the thoughts and then let them go, maybe replace them with something, not avoid them, but are they really leading us anywhere that's worthy of our station in life?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, man, thank you so much for all that. We're moving up here on the hour, so I do want you to talk a little about the clothing line.
Mm.
What drew you to that? What are your views on polyester underwear and such? And
Yeah, I can say that somewhere along the way, um, there was an incredible man that said to me, he's like, man, I can't wait to see your expression come online. I can't wait to see who the Wayne is underneath that sweater vest that you're wearing, from Men's Warehouse, which I actually wore to my first event because kind of treated it like an interview. And next thing you know, I see all these, you know, primal dudes dressed in leather and straps. And I'm just like, what is going on? And it really activated something in me. And, amongst the, you know, conversation of the systems and the food and all the things that we put into our body, I got really cognizant about the things that I was actually resting my body on. And I started, kind of studying about the frequencies of different materials, but then I actually started getting a little bit deeper and I started studying the chemicals and the forever chemicals that are going into these materials. And what it did for me, Hunter, is there was a shift along the way at some point where I'm like, everything just turned into plastic. Like everything that's being pitched, I could feel it. It was subtle. And I was like, oh, this is exciting because it's moisture wicking and all, like it's lightweight and it's stretchy. And, you know, it's kind of like buying Cinnamon Toast Crunch, but not looking at the ingredients, because it's just like, it's people banking, these companies, these businesses banking on the look here without actually doing any research. You know, go ahead and take this, trust the experts, trust us, we've got you covered. But once I realized all of the big corporations were all in it, in an agenda to keep everybody sick, in combination to decrease testosterone, in combination to decrease fertility, myself actually having experienced that at some point when my ex-wife and I were doing IVF, and I was like 32, man. There's no reason I shouldn't have been, you know, like primed at the pump. But everything that I was ingesting, my environment, everything that was laying on me was toxic. And so I went on this mission where I was like, okay, where are the brands that are doing it the right way? And albeit there's a handful of brands out there that are really doing it the right way, but not many. And not many that had like the grit and the flair of my expression. I started studying the mission statements of brands, right? Where I was like, what are the founders? What's the energy that's being infused into the clothing? And I was like astounded. They were like, this is for the man that just wants to fit in. I'm like, what? This is for the man that just simply enjoys comfort. I'm like, okay, I could get down with comfort, but like even the framing of the language was like keeping men in particular categories and boxes. And I'm just not one to like be checked off as one box. I'm a fucking rebel. I'm a mystic. I'm a warrior. I'm comfy, cozy dad. I'm a facilitator. Man, I've got so many boxes that encapsulate that which I am. I wanted a brand that actually reflected that because I wanted to be able to wear that and move with that transmission out into the world, and it didn't exist. So I had to create it. And that's what Sovereign One is. And after years of carefully curating and studying materials, doing the research, finding the right things, testing, being pushed, being tested, failing, picking myself back up again, spending every penny in the world to bring this thing into existence, I get to birth something that's really special to me and something that is going to be an expression of my essence and my voice and my character and my uniqueness. And I really hope it inspires some other men to start bringing through some of their own gems in whatever way. Because if a construction dude from Chicago can do it, anybody can do it, you know.
Not just any construction dude, but yeah. Well,
Not any construction dude.
yeah, I love that. I often think of, wrapping ourselves in plastic is in a way wrapping ourselves in dinosaur consciousness, right? It's and
Tell me more.
this reptilian brain that
Yeah.
is overriding, so many people's experience through the nervous system. And again, like, what is the garment? Does anything not emit thought or consciousness? I don't think anything does. I come from an animist perspective. So what is used, that oil is brought up, so are we exacerbating that fight, flight, freeze, fawn expression by wearing polyester? I'm not saying it is, but I think it's a good question, and then I think it is really important just to restate to the men out there, like, if you're wearing plastic underwear, it is leaching estrogen, fake estrogen, into your body, and it's going to cause hormone disruption that
Yes.
can lead to all kinds of problems over time.
Protect your nuts.
Yeah. And so Sovereign One going to be coming our way before too long.
Yes. Yeah, the first drop's going to be, mid fall, late fall. I'm going to start
Okay.
bringing that first drop, the first capsule through, and the world will know. It's going to be piercing into the algorithm. We're going to have probably the best models in the game from across the world. You're going to recognize them. You're going to feel them. You're going to know them. And it truly is the sovereign ones in my life, the men that have been on this journey with me, the men that get to continue to be on this journey with me. And, really I wanted to reflect all the brothers in my life, like their soul expression. And because I don't think the sovereign one needs to look any particular way. I think he just gets to look the way that he wants to look, and he owns the shit out of it. That's the sovereign one.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, it's so important that people begin to move through the sovereignty in a way that isn't like the old king who uses their sovereignty to make decisions only for self, right? But from that sovereignty, find a clarity of expression where one is now unburdened enough to be in service to life, but to enjoy life, to connect with life, to continue to grow. It's not an ending point, right? It's another initiation. It's another. To me, sovereignty is another semi-permeable membrane of a type, because we still, in true sovereignty, allow other influence in, but it goes through the filter of clarity and discernment, and and we can move with it or not. Yeah, I'm really excited for that to drop, and I don't know if it's propriety secrets but do you want to tell the people what material you did land on and chose?
Yeah, I tried everything, and there's going to be many, many, many different materials as materials actually continue to be like invented, and that was the wild card. Is that initially, I was like, I dig cotton, I dig it. Like organic
Yeah.
cotton's pretty great, but I live in Texas, and it doesn't work here. And, it gets to be about 111, 115 degrees for 2 or 3 times out of the month. And it actually doesn't breathe. And so I'd go to the gym, and I was like, man, it's really what got really crunchy for me. Cause I was like, this is just cramping my style. And then I found this new material called tensile modal, and it blew my mind. It's biodegradable. It's made of beech tree, eucalyptus tree, and it stretches, and it's 50% more breathable than cotton. And as soon as I started putting it on the guys in Austin, they were like, yo, you cracked the freaking code, man. You cracked the code. And, the material is being used in women's fashion. Women are on the front end of fashion. They're on the front end of feeling and textures. Guys don't pay attention to that enough. Women do. The movement for women towards more natural fibers and moving away from polyester is happening. And women are always the trailblazers when it comes to where their money goes. And so a lot of manufacturers are starting to shift things over towards tensile modal in the women's space. But in the men's space, no, it's profit first. And so I'm looking to come in and niche this, because as boxers, this is second skin. It's like literally you don't even know that you're wearing boxers, and you're not having endocrine disruptors being leached into your skin. So, and I'm also going to be using different blends of, linens and cottons moving forward, because I absolutely love them. So there's going to be different flavors, different textures, and absolutely not an ounce of polyester in anything that I ever sell.
Beautiful. Thank you for your commitment to that, and
Yeah, man.
seeing the vision through. It's been really beautiful to watch you in your process. And I think maybe you had mentioned that the new tariffs had caused a little glitch in your systems. It's good to hear that you've been able to find a way.
Yeah, it was purposeful. Everything's purposeful. Everything is purposeful. And I sat in it, and when it all navigated itself, I was actually able to cut out the middleman and get directly to the manufacturer. And it's been a beautiful, beautiful part of the process. So I'm learning.
Beautiful. Yeah. I often say, both my sons are a solid 3, 4 inches taller than me. And people are like, well, what's that about? I'm like, well, it might have been the biodynamic wool that they were in for the first 2 years of their lives.
So true, man. So true.
Just organizing those forces. In my tradition, we even say that the fabrics we wear organize the cosmic forces coming in if they recognize,
Mm,
if it is an expression of the earth and cosmos, it'll actually um, increase the vibration of the human being by wearing, the right type of garments. And, we see this throughout religions and spirituality,
yes. The,
so
this babies were actually wrapped in linen
yeah.
once they were born, you know. And of course, all the hijacking that changes. But when I heard that, I was like, what is it about the linen? And yeah, it actually increases your frequency because it's not dead. It's a living organism.
It is a living organism. And so, with that, as we step out here, why don't you tell any closing words for the living organisms out there that are listening in the ether sphere?
To answer the call, I think we're in a really unique time. I think we're at a turning point, unlike any other turning points in the world, where I think a lot of people are hearing a whisper and they're feeling the nudge to lean into the next evolution of their truth, of their expression, of their sovereignty. My invitation is to answer the call. The world's just waiting for all of your color. It's waiting for all of your expression. It's waiting for your truth. And my prayer is that you'll be received with love 100-fold than that which you expected. Pray bigger.
Pray bigger. Beautiful words from a man on the path of elderhood, Wayne Barkus, still a young man, but consciously engaging his growth. Wayne, thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure, brother.
Many blessings on your life, and I can't wait for the next time we're close together physically,
Same.
and just staying tuned in. I know great things coming from you and to you. So again, thank you so much. Much love.
Yeah, big love, brother. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for bringing your truth through and just keep showing up.
I promise.